Life doesn't care if you're tired, or lonely, or heartbroken. The world keeps moving. And for many men, that realization comes not through comfort, but through pain. If you've ever sat quietly in your room, scrolling through old messages, or watching her stop replying, wondering what you did wrong, then this is for you. Not to shame, but to sharpen. Because the Stoic man does not beg to be chosen. He chooses himself. These 12 habits aren't tricks or toxic coping mechanisms. They're ancient principles forged in the fire of suffering, designed to mold men into steel. This isn't about impressing women. This is about building a life so centered, so solid, that whether she stays or leaves, you stay unshaken. Each habit is a chisel in your hand, carving out the man you've always had within you. Now is the time to wake him. This is not about pretending you don't feel the pain. It's about mastering it, facing it, owning it. You don't numb it with distractions or bury it under empty affirmations. You let it burn long enough to turn it into fuel. These habits aren't for the faint-hearted. They're for those who are done with excuses, done with waiting, done with hoping someone else will fix it. These habits are your path forward. Habit 1, wake. Before the world, there's something sacred about being awake when the rest of the world is still asleep. It's not about hustle culture. It's not about being alpha. It's about reclaiming the first hour of the day as your own. Unpolluted by noise, untouched by chaos. When you wake before the world, you're not just getting a head start on tasks. You're giving your mind space to breathe. You move through stillness before the storm. You think clearly, without the pull of notifications, messages, or outside demands. You become the author of your day, not a reaction to it. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius wrote about rising with discipline, even when the bed is warm and your body is heavy. He reminded himself that he was made for effort, not comfort, that each day is a chance to live in accordance with nature, to do your duty, to be useful, to be present. When you rise early, you meet yourself, the real you, before the masks, before the roles. In that silence, you can ask, who am I becoming? What kind of man do I want to be? And what can I do today, even in small ways, to move toward that? You don't need a perfect morning routine. You need a sacred one. Wake up, breathe, reflect, train, write. Even 30 minutes of solitude can reset your entire emotional landscape. Over time, this habit becomes a ritual, and that ritual becomes a rhythm, and that rhythm starts shaping your identity. You stop waking up in reaction. You start waking up with intention. You don't rise early because you're better. You rise early because you're building. And every morning you do, you're telling the world, I choose discipline over delay. I choose clarity over chaos. I choose to show up before anyone expects me to. That's what Stoic men do. They lead themselves, quietly, relentlessly, before the world ever sees it. Habit 2. Train your body like a warrior. Your body is not decoration. It is your vessel, your armor, your battlefield. The Stoics didn't chase aesthetics for vanity. They trained for function, for discipline, for mastery of the self. Epictetus, born into slavery, later taught that the body must be trained so that the soul may govern it, not the other way around. In a world that tells men to numb pain and avoid pressure, physical training becomes sacred rebellion. When you train, you're not just building muscle, you're building proof. Proof that you can endure discomfort, that you can keep showing up when it hurts, that you do not back down from effort. It doesn't matter whether you lift weights, run hills, or practice martial arts. What matters is that you sweat daily, that you choose pressure on purpose. Every drop of sweat is a message to your mind. I am capable. I am resilient. I am becoming. A man who cannot control his body will be controlled by his impulses, his anger, his lust, his laziness. But a man who trains, he becomes dangerous, not because of violence, but because of discipline, because he can choose restraint, because he has faced chaos and learned to channel it. Your training doesn't have to be extreme. It has to be consistent. You don't need six-pack abs to be a warrior. You need a back that doesn't fold under pressure, legs that don't quit when the path gets steep, a mind that doesn't panic when the pain arrives. There will be days you don't want to show up. That's when it matters most. You're not training for fun. You're training for the days life breaks your heart, empties your bank account, or leaves you alone. You're building a body that can carry the weight because you know that someday it will have to. So train, not to impress, but to prepare, to protect, to remain sharp while others dull themselves with comfort. The Stoic doesn't need a mirror to know he's strong. He knows it by what he can carry and what he can walk away from without breaking. Habit 3, practice voluntary discomfort. Discomfort is inevitable. The Stoic knows this. But instead of waiting for life to impose it, he chooses it. He steps into discomfort on purpose, not because he enjoys pain, but because he understands its value. Voluntary discomfort is training for the soul. It's choosing to walk through the fire before the fire finds you. It might look like taking a cold shower, fasting for a day, turning off your phone, sleeping on the floor, speaking up when silence would be easier. Each time you strip away a comfort, you expose a part of yourself, and you learn what you're really made of. Seneca, a Roman senator surrounded by wealth, practiced poverty regularly. He wore worn-out clothes, ate basic food, slept uncomfortably, not because he had to, but to remind himself, is this what I feared? He knew that most of our anxiety doesn't come from what is, but from what we imagine we couldn't handle. He proved to himself that he could handle it all, and so can you. When you avoid discomfort, you become fragile. You begin to need things, specific routines, validation, pleasure. But when you lean into discomfort, you become flexible, dangerous, calm in chaos, because you've seen the bottom and it didn't break you. Modern men are starved for resilience. They run from silence, from boredom, from any moment not filled with stimulation. But the Stoic man turns down the noise. He walks headfirst into friction and walks out sharper. Start small. Eat a plain meal. Walk without headphones. Leave your phone behind. Sit in silence for 20 minutes. Let your thoughts rise, unfiltered. It's not about suffering. It's about separating yourself from addiction to ease. The more discomfort you choose, the more power you gain, not over others, but over yourself. And that is the only power worth chasing. Because when the real trials come, and they will, you'll already be forged in fire. Pain becomes less scary, hunger less unbearable, loneliness less consuming. Because you've already sat with all three and realized they couldn't kill you. This is the Stoic edge, not being numb, but being ready. Habit 4, don't speak to be heard, speak to be useful. Most people talk to fill silence, to be seen, to prove something, but the Stoic speaks with intention. He doesn't speak because he needs validation. He speaks because what he says serves a purpose, to bring clarity, to solve, to strengthen. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." In a world addicted to opinions and noise, silence becomes power, listening becomes rare, and restraint becomes a form of dominance. When you don't rush to speak, people lean in when you do. Your words carry weight, not because they're louder, but because they're measured. A man who has control over his tongue is a man who has control over his emotions. This habit is not just about external conversation. It's about inner dialogue too. What do you say to yourself all day? Is it helpful or is it noise? Stoic speech begins with Stoic thought, precise, honest, purposeful. Start noticing when you speak, just to fill gaps, to avoid awkwardness, or to win approval. Pause instead. Ask yourself, is what I'm about to say necessary? Is it kind? Is it clear? If it's not, let the silence speak. It often says more. When you do speak, make it clean, direct, grounded. Whether it's advice to a brother, a boundary with a woman, or a correction to yourself, be firm without aggression. Be clear without ego. Truth doesn't need to shout. You'll find that people begin to trust your words more when you speak less. You'll find that your own thoughts become sharper when you stop filling the air with noise. And you'll feel less drained because not everything needs a reaction. This is what makes a Stoic dangerous. He doesn't just speak to be right, he speaks to build, to cut through fog, to plant roots in truth. And when the world is yelling, he's the one voice that remains calm, precise, and unforgettable.
Habit 5. Write daily, even if no one reads it.
There's a kind of therapy that doesn't come from talking. It comes from facing the page. Writing isn't about being a poet or a philosopher. It's about thinking clearly, feeling honestly, and exposing the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. Marcus Aurelius, the Emperor of Rome, wrote one of the most powerful books in history, Meditations, and he never meant for anyone to read it. It wasn't a performance, it was a practice, a mirror, a place to anchor his mind in the storm of war, politics, loss, and pressure. When you write daily, even just a few sentences, you begin to sort the noise in your head. You name your fears instead of letting them multiply in the dark. You capture insights before they vanish. And most importantly, you begin to see patterns in yourself. Patterns you can change. This habit isn't about results. It's about rhythm. You don't write because it's easy. You write because it sharpens your awareness. It humbles your ego. It shows you what still needs healing and what's already grown. You might write about the woman who left, the way you reacted, the way you wish you hadn't, or about what you're building, what you're proud of, what scares you. Write without filters, without structure, just bleed onto the page. It doesn't have to be pretty, it has to be honest. And in that honesty, you'll find something most men never touch: clarity. Writing makes you dangerous, because a man who knows himself cannot be manipulated. He doesn't chase chaos because he's already faced his own. And when he speaks, it's from reflection, not reaction. So get a journal. Keep it near your bed, your desk, your bag. Use it like armor. Use it like a sword. Let it become your sanctuary, your battlefield, your confession booth. Write daily, even if no one reads it, because the words aren't for them. They're for the man you're becoming.
Habit 6. Refuse to chase validation.
The moment you need someone to approve of you, you give them the power to define you. And the Stoic man does not hand over that power. Not to a woman, not to the crowd, not even to his past self. His worth is rooted, not rented. Most men today don't realize how addicted they are to validation. Every outfit, every post, every message sent at the perfect time, hoping for a ping, a like, a reply, hoping to be chosen. But when you need to be chosen to feel whole, you've already lost. The Stoic doesn't chase validation because he understands the trap. Once you taste it, you start to crave it, and craving makes you bend. You soften your boundaries, you suppress your voice, you shrink yourself to fit what you think they want. That's not power, that's slavery in disguise. Refusing to chase validation doesn't mean becoming cold or arrogant. It means you begin to approve of yourself. You begin to act in alignment with your values, not in anticipation of applause. You speak because it's true, not because it's popular. You show up fully, even when no one notices. It's not easy, especially if you've been heartbroken, if you've been ignored, if you've gone nights wondering why she didn't pick you. But this habit isn't forged in ease, it's forged in solitude. In sitting with the discomfort of not being chosen and realizing you're still here. You're still breathing, you still matter. When you refuse to chase validation, you take back your time, your dignity, your presence. You stop performing and start living. You stop begging to be loved and start becoming someone who is grounded enough to love himself and strong enough to walk away if that love isn't matched. The irony? When you stop seeking validation, people begin to notice you more. Because confidence, real confidence, is rare. Not loud, not fake, but calm, unshakable, rooted in something deeper than approval. The Stoic doesn't need applause to keep going. His compass is internal, his drive is silent, and his validation comes from one place: the man in the mirror and the question, did I live today in alignment with my truth? If yes, then no rejection, no silence, no betrayal can shake him.
Habit 7.
Seek stillness, not stimulation. Modern life runs on noise. Notifications, endless scrolling, flashing screens, background music in every room. Most men don't even realize how overstimulated they are until they sit in silence and feel the weight of their own thoughts pressed down like gravity. The Stoic warrior understands this. Stimulation is not the same as peace. Excitement is not the same as meaning. And being constantly entertained is a form of quiet desperation. a way to outrun the self. Stillness is not easy, that's why it's powerful. When you sit with no distractions, your mind will rebel. It will bring up the memories you buried, the conversations you avoided, the choices you regret. That's the process. That's the detox. You are clearing the fog that constant noise creates. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth, but he still carved out time to sit in silence and write to himself, to think, to ask, what matters? What is mine to control? What am I clinging to that I should let go of? Stillness is the place where self-awareness is born. It's where direction is found, and it's where you become dangerous. Because a man who can sit with his own mind without needing escape is a man no one can manipulate. Start small, 10 minutes with no phone, no music, just sit, breathe, feel the discomfort, then go deeper. Walk alone without a podcast, eat without a screen. Observe your thoughts without judging them. Eventually, you'll start to hear the voice underneath the noise, your real voice. In stillness, you remember that you are not your urges, not your fears, not your failures. You are the awareness behind them, the witness, the warrior watching the storm from the mountaintop, unshaken, unmoved. Stimulation fades, stillness builds. This habit isn't about becoming a monk, it's about becoming solid. So when the world pulls at you, with drama, with temptation, with chaos, you don't flinch. You've already made peace with the silence. And that silence has made you strong. The Stoic doesn't run from boredom. He runs toward presence. And in that presence, he finds his edge. Habit 8. Do one thing every day you don't want to do. You will not rise by doing what's easy. You will not grow by doing only what feels good. Comfort is a prison disguised as peace. And the Stoic man trains himself to walk through the bars, one act of discomfort at a time. Doing one thing every day that you don't want to do is not about punishment. It's about practice. It's about becoming the kind of man who acts on principle, not preference. A man who knows pain is not an enemy, it's a teacher. Most people wait for motivation. They wait until they feel ready. But the Stoic knows that readiness is a myth. You act not because you're in the mood, but because your mission doesn't care about your mood. You show up for the cold shower, for the run in the rain, for the phone call you've been avoiding, because those are the moments that separate boys from men. The discomfort doesn't need to be dramatic. You don't need to suffer for hours a day, but every single time you override your inner resistance, even in a small way, you teach your nervous system something profound. I do what must be done, even when I don't want to. That becomes identity, and identity becomes destiny. Take a cold shower. Sit in meditation even when your mind is loud. Tell the truth even when a lie would be easier. Approach the stranger. Have the hard conversation. Choose the stairs. Skip the sugar. Get up early. Work out when you're tired. Clean your space even when no one sees it. Every one of these is a rep. A rep for your willpower. A rep for your future. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Most of the time, the dread of the task is worse than the task itself. But the moment you step in, the moment you move anyway, you shrink fear, you starve doubt, you prove to yourself that you are not ruled by comfort. There will be days when your mind screams for the shortcut, when you will try to rationalize delay. That's the moment. That's the exact moment you must act. Because how you respond in those micro moments is what shapes your self-respect. A man who consistently backs down from discomfort becomes fragile. He loses trust in himself. He wonders why he feels anxious and weak. But the man who faces the hard thing daily, even once, builds momentum. He begins to walk differently, speak differently, think differently. That's not arrogance, that's alignment, and it's visible. Eventually, this habit becomes a lifestyle. You no longer fear pressure, you lean into it. You no longer avoid the hard path, you seek it, not because it hurts, but because it refines. The Stoic doesn't wish for ease, he trains for excellence. And every day, he proves to himself that comfort is optional, but courage is non-negotiable. Habit 9. Learn from rejection instead of personalizing it. Rejection feels personal. It feels like someone looked at you, all of you, and said, not enough. That ache in your chest, that knot in your stomach, that silence after the message left on read, it feels like judgment. But the Stoic man knows better. He knows rejection is not a verdict, it's a mirror, a moment, a lesson. Most men take rejection and tie it to their identity. They make it a story. I'm unlovable, I'm not good enough, I'll always be alone. But those stories are not truth. They're wounds left untreated. And when you carry those wounds into your future, they bleed into everything you touch. The Stoic rewrites that story. He pauses and asks, what did this reveal? What part of me ignored the signs? What assumptions did I make? What truths did I overlook? When you stop running from rejection and sit with it, you discover something powerful. It wasn't about you, or at least not in the way you thought. Sometimes rejection is just timing. Sometimes it's incompatibility. Sometimes it's your shadow being mirrored back to you. You grow not by avoiding pain, but by inspecting it. When a woman leaves, you grieve, but then you dissect, not to blame her, not to shame yourself, but to gain clarity. And clarity is the birthplace of peace. You'll begin to see rejection as redirection, as pruning, as refinement. You stop needing every door to open because you trust your own walk through the hallway. You trust that what closes is making space for what fits. This habit builds unshakable confidence because you stop begging to be seen. You start choosing to see yourself. And that kind of self-awareness, that's rare, that's magnetic, that's the root of masculine presence. So next time rejection knocks, don't brace, open the door. Let it speak, let it teach, then thank it and continue building. Because you weren't meant to be for everyone. You were meant to be true to yourself. Habit 10, build more than you consume. Most people are drowning in consumption, scrolling, watching, reacting, commenting, but never creating, never contributing. And over time, something inside them begins to shrink. Because men weren't made just to absorb, they were made to build. The Stoic understands this. He feels it when he finishes a project, when he builds his body, his business, his mindset. That grounded pride that says, I made this, I chose this, I didn't wait to be fed. You don't need to be an artist. You don't need followers. You just need to ask, what am I making with my life? A body that can endure, a mind that sees clearly, a space that feels calm, a relationship that's honest. Building makes you present. It moves you from passivity to purpose, and that shift is everything. The problem is that consumption is designed to sedate. It's designed to feel like progress. You watched a motivational reel. You feel good, but did you do anything? You listened to a podcast, but did you change anything? Every hour spent consuming without action is an hour training your brain to expect dopamine without output. And that's a dangerous habit for a man. Because when the time comes to act, to lead, to produce, he's empty, numb, disconnected from his own ability. You don't need to become a monk, just shift the ratio. Create more than you consume. Write, build, train, fix, offer, improve. It can be small, organizing your space, helping someone in silence, making your bed with intention. These acts matter. Each time you build, you reclaim sovereignty over your life. You show yourself, I am not just a vessel for consumption, I am a force for creation. That's what makes a man feel alive. Not how many opinions he absorbs, but how often he stands back and sees the evidence of his effort. Build more, consume less, and watch your self-respect grow brick by brick. Habit 11. Choose principles over preference. There will be days when what feels good and what is right are at war. And the Stoic does not hesitate. He chooses what is right, not because he enjoys pain, but because he's made a vow. I will not betray who I am for temporary pleasure. Principles are not trendy. They don't adapt to moods. They don't flex with pressure. They stand even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. To most, principles seem restrictive, but to the Stoic, they are freedom. They are the lines that hold your form when everything else pulls you toward compromise. When others are swayed by the crowd, you hold the line. When temptation knocks, you don't negotiate with your values, you remember your vow. That's how you build self-trust, not by getting it right every time, but by choosing your code and returning to it, again and again. Even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. Do you have your code written? Do you know what you stand for? Not slogans, not cliches, but real principles. I do not lie. I do not chase. I do not waste time. I speak directly. I hold the door for the burdened. I walk away from disrespect. I protect what matters, even if it costs me. Start with a few. Live them daily. Let them become your armor. Because without principles, you'll live based on how you feel, and feelings change with the wind. The man who chooses principle over preference becomes rare, and rarity is power. Not because it's loud, but because it's solid, grounded, rooted in something deeper than ego or emotion. Live by a code. Let it cost you. Let it cleanse you. Let it shape you into someone even you respect. Habit 12, accept what you can't control, then rise anyway. There is power in surrender, not giving up but letting go, accepting what is instead of wasting your life resisting it. The Stoic sees the world not as he wishes it were, but as it is, clear-eyed, unattached, steady. She left, he lied, they forgot, you lost. Okay, and now? Now you rise. Because acceptance is not weakness, it is clarity. It is the doorway to action. You don't control the outcome, but you control your response. You control your breath, your pace, your integrity. That is enough. That is everything. Most men waste years trying to rewrite the past in their heads, trying to make her love them again, trying to get closure from people who don't care. But the Stoic man knows closure is not something you're given. It's something you create when you stop needing permission to move forward. This habit is the highest form of emotional maturity. This hurts, but I'm not going to resist it. I'm going to use it. Life will keep throwing what it wants. People will act out their patterns. The world will spin as it does. But you choose your stance. You choose to build anyway, train anyway, love again. Not because they deserve it, but because you refuse to let bitterness write your story. Acceptance doesn't mean apathy. It means ownership. It means seeing clearly what is yours to shape and what isn't, and putting your energy only where it counts. In that clarity, you become untouchable. The storms come and you don't flinch. The praise comes and you don't swell. The loss comes and you don't collapse. You've trained for this. You've chosen it. You're no longer a man grasping for control. You're a man walking in purpose, calm, grounded, and alive. That is emotional unbreakability. This life will test you. You'll be ghosted. You'll be mocked. You'll be underestimated. You'll spend nights alone wondering if it's all worth it. But with these habits, you won't just survive. You'll become immovable. You'll stop being a man swayed by impulse, by need, by fear, and become one defined by direction. Quiet, grounded, dangerous not because of your rage, but because of your control. That's the Stoic way. You don't beg for peace, you build it, brick by brick, day by day, inside your own ribcage. You don't chase love, you become love. You radiate presence. And you don't fall apart when she leaves. You become more whole. Because at your core, you were never missing anything. You just forgot who you were. And now you remember. You are the one who stands back up, who keeps his word when no one is watching, who carries pain not as a burden but as a badge. You are not defined by what left. You are defined by what remains. So let them doubt you. Let them leave. Let them misunderstand your silence. Because while others seek comfort, you are being forged. While others numb the ache, you are learning from it. And while others fold, you endure. Remember this, pain is your teacher. Discipline is your armor. Stillness is your edge. And your pulse, it beats with Stoic fire. Subscribe to Stoic Pulse and stay unshaken.